This
Regulatory.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, Rich, I will put you down as, are you caller number, you must be caller number 2.
I don't know.
It's fine, Rich.
All right, we'll call this meeting of the Common Council to order. Roll call, please.
Alderman Kraus. Alderman Tully.
Here.
Fire.
Here.
Niles. Miller.
Here.
Brandel.
Here.
Lars.
Here.
And Young.
Here.
Okay, I'm sorry. At this time, we'll welcome Jody Dobson from Baker Tilly, and she will give us a presentation on the Jefferson Sewer and Stormwater Utilities Audit Report. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you very much. You should have, it's about a 4-page handout in your packet that I'm going to walk through. And the first page is a cover, but the second page is kind of a highlights of the audit results. I will say we have not issued the final sewer and storm audit report yet. We're just waiting for a couple administrative items, and then we'll date and issue it along with the citywide report. But we've completed substantially all the work. So the statements will be receiving a clean or an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can give, similar to what you've had in the past. And that really lets you and outside readers know that in looking at these financial statements, you're getting a fair presentation of the financial position and the operations of the utilities. There is within the report a management discussion and analysis, which really provides a high-level analysis of the results that management puts together. It takes out some of the accounting jargon and focuses on, in plain English, what happened during the year to drive the results. So I always like to point that out to people. As far as the financial statements themselves, we have the statement of net position, which is a snapshot in time as of year end, where the utilities each stand. The statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, which really shows the operating results on a full accrual basis for the year. And then there's a statement of cash flows that focuses more on where the cash comes from and what it's used for. Overall, both utilities had relatively stable operations. We'll look at some benchmarks and ratios in a little bit here, and had positive net position for the year. There was some less capital activity than in some prior years. And I would say, for the most part, operating costs and funding sources were consistent with prior years. We'll touch on a couple variances there, but nothing significant or unusual. And then obviously within the actual financial statement documents, there's the footnotes to the financial statement, which provide a lot more detail on balances, policies, transactions, etc. A few other things that come out of the audit process. We always like to highlight our objective during the audit is to issue our audit opinion. So we start by understanding the processes and the controls that management has in place in order to focus our work on where the high-risk areas or the segments of operations that have more transactions, to be able to get enough evidence to issue that opinion. And we touched on the audit status that we're virtually complete. No real surprises in the results for this year. I think everything was fairly consistent with prior years. No major changes in accounting principles to implement this year. There was one new standard for the utilities related to some footnote disclosures for debt, but that didn't have a big impact. within the final reports that you receive, there will be some information on trending challenges for municipal organizations, just some extra information for you on things that we're seeing or hearing about. And then obviously there's all the required communications, things that we would have to communicate to you if they occurred, such as difficulties or past journal entries or consultations with other auditors or anything like that, or disagreements. There was nothing in there that we would need to report that's of significance. So that's a no news is good news section. So if we go then to the third page of the handout, this is the sewer utility results. And what we wanted to do here is just focus on a handful of key benchmarks that come out of the financial results. So the first graph here at the top looks at over the last 5 years, the operating revenues, which is the green line, and then the operating expenses, which is the black line. So we can see first the revenues has been in excess of the expenses for the last 5 years, which is good. The margin has gotten a little bit closer, but I think that was as designed in some of the more recent rate studies to make sure that we've got appropriate recovery, but not more than necessary. And for 2018 to 2019, as we look at things here, revenues were relatively stable, only about a $5,000 change there. Expenses did decrease a little bit. And when I went back and looked at the details there, the two biggest categories was there was less sludge hauling and lower insurance expenses in 2019. So if we go right underneath the table here, the next item that we always like to look at is the unrestricted cash reserves at year end. For 2019, we can see there was a little over $1.2 million, which represent roughly 9 months worth of operations. So that's a very strong reserve to be at. GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, would say a bare minimum of 3 months worth of operations on hand. And we can see the trend here for the last few years that this has been slowly building. So what that does is it allows you flexibility as projects come up, whether that be some non-routine maintenance or a capital project, you have options as to how you finance those things. The next item that we like to look at is the debt coverage. Because the sewer utility does have some revenue bonds outstanding, that there's a requirement that your revenues be enough to cover your operating costs and then 1.25 times your debt service. And as we looked at that, you actually, at the end of 2019, were at 2.5 times. So again, very strong debt coverage there, meaning you have the flexibility if you did need to borrow for something, that there's capacity. So good to be in a situation of options. And then also combined with that, we like to look at how much of the infrastructure on all the capital assets for the utility is financed through equity or debt. And so that's the bar we have here at the bottom of the page. You see about 16% financed through debt. That's really a low amount of debt outstanding. So that's a strong position to be in. And then if we go to the last page, we have some similar information for the stormwater utility. Starting with the operating results, we can see for 2019, the expenses did exceed the revenues. And when I looked back at that, there was some unusual maintenance expense, I think, that occurred in 2019. And in addition, the depreciation expense increased as a result of the ongoing investment in the assets of the stormwater utility. So that's just something to monitor. The depreciation is obviously a non-cash item, so it's not something that you have to pay out. But if you're seeing that you're going to continue to be investing in replacements and additions to the system, it may mean that you need to reevaluate where those rates are at to make sure that you've got funding for that. Looking then at the unrestricted reserves in the middle of the page, we do see a decrease from 2018 to 2019, so about 260,000 on hand at year end, which still was about 8 months worth of operations. So strong position to be in. Over the last few years, those reserves had been built up, and that allowed you to draw those down this year for some projects or that unusual maintenance. And then the stormwater utility does not have revenue bonds outstanding, so we don't look at a debt coverage. But in looking at how much of the assets are financed through equity or debt, less than 2, or right about 2% are financed through debt. So again, very low amount of debt outstanding, which gives you that flexibility as future projects do come up. So that's the summary information that I had to present, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on this or the draft reports.
Does anyone have any questions of Jody?
I have one, Dale, I'd like to ask. Hey, Jody, it's Tim. I wanted to ask you about the city's decision to move a large portion of our residential building to fixed rates. Now, we've been in that system now for quite a bit of time. Generally, my sense of it is that that has caused very, very few problems, and it really has moved the city and the utility more in the direction of rate stabilization, just because, you know, those fluctuations in water usage that we've seen over the years really is kind of taken out of the equation. And I guess I just wanted to ask you whether, as you reviewed the city's financial position and developed these statements, have you seen anything that would suggest that we made a poor choice or we made a wrong choice?
No, I mean, I think your comment is absolutely correct that making that change took a very large portion or segment of your revenues and stabilized that. So for you, it's much more predictable as to what that revenue stream is going to be. For your customers, their bill is more predictable. And actually, within the sewer utility, there is a DNR requirement that you look at the adequacy of rates overall, or the total revenues coming into the utility, on a biannual basis. So I think that combined with that allows you to make sure that if there are any significant changes in the operating costs of the utility, that you have a mechanism to adjust that rate structure to make sure that you're accommodating for those.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? If not, thank you very much, Jody. We really appreciate your work, and we're glad you could join us tonight, if not in person.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to work with everyone at the city.
Thanks. Great job. Next, we'll move on to a presentation on the 2020 capital improvement projects. City Engineer Bill Pino.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. I just wanted to give a brief update on capital projects that are going on in the city right now. The 2020 street improvements project, that consists of Milwaukee Street, East Milwaukee Street between South Main and Center. That project was not scheduled to be paved until June or July, but because of the fact that schools are canceled and businesses are closed, we're trying to take advantage of some of the construction timelines. So right now, Milwaukee Street between South Main and Center is actually scheduled for milling and resurfacing next week. The road will be closed to traffic and parking from May 5th to 7th. That's Tuesday through Thursday of next week. What we're anticipating is on Tuesday, Wolf Paving will be in to mill portions of the road. Paving will occur on Wednesday, and then public works crews will be in to stripe the street and open it back up on Thursday. I have been in the process of contacting any of the affected businesses that are currently open, and no issues with that at this point. I will be getting something out on Facebook this week to notify people of that as well. Marshall Street, the water main improvements will begin on March 11th by R. Walton, and that'll continue during the month of May. Paving on Marshall, Glenwood, and Wildwood Court is expected in June. As far as Rock River Landing Park and Elizabeth Street, The county has completed their rough grading of the park and roadway. Yankee General Contracting has mobilized to the site, and they have started their work on the park. What the photo that you have right here is them dewatering for the construction of the boat ramp. We have a meeting tomorrow to talk schedule on this, but they are dewatering at this point, and construction is moving as scheduled. So we're excited to see that project moving forward. Work on that project is expected to continue throughout the summer. As far as the boardwalk and riverwalk, the contract has been awarded to Yankee General Contractors. The work is expected to begin in June or July. Right now, we're still working on some coordination with Union Pacific along the tracks there. The cold storage building down at the city garage, that is the Parks and Maintenance cold storage building. We have a state review date on May 15th, at which time the building will be ordered as soon as that is completed by the city's contractor, which is Boss Design Builders. City crews are going to be starting construction or starting grading on that lot next week, and then Boss Design Builders is expected to be on site in early June. Construction of the building is expected to be completed in by late July or early August. And then also the entrance sign, which was approved last year, that's being completed by La Crosse Sign. That project, I have a meeting tomorrow, and we are anticipating that we will be seeing construction of that later in May. The location of this sign, to give you the best location, south of Junction Road, between Junction Road and the pond, there is a Century 21 sign, essentially right where that sign on the peak of that point is going to be where the city entrance sign is. Again, this is going to be an LED reader board sign. So I'm anticipating that by the end of May, early June, this is in place for use by the city. We have not yet set the guidelines as far as how that sign is going to be used, but I would anticipate, at least for the first month, it's probably going to be used for city updates. And then we'll be bringing that in front of council for any modifications to regulations on how that sign is going to be used. That's all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Bill,
Are there any questions of Bill?
Bill, this is Alderman Miller. What did you say the dates were for closure of Milwaukee Street?
That will be May 5th through 7th. So next,
I'm
today.
sorry.
Today's the 5th.
Today is the 5th. So that will be May 12th through 14th. May 12th through 14th. I'm glad I did send out the notice to Facebook yet, so thanks for catching that. So next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Hearing none. We'll move on to tonight's consent agenda and ask Alderwoman Byer to please read resolution number 4.
Honorable Mayor, council members, and citizens listening in. Consent agenda, consent agenda resolution number 4. Vouchers payable for April 2020 in the amounts of $221,159. Payroll summary for April 24th, 2020 in the amounts of $164,550. Council minutes from April 21st, 2020 of the Common Council. Licenses as approved by Regulatory Committee. We have one operator's license for Alyssa Cola Champion for Quick Trip. and we recommended the Fisher Field lease agreement. I would so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Please state your name.
I would second. Tully.
Thank you, Alderman Tully. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, on the call the roll, please signify by saying aye if you approve, no if you don't.
Alderman Tully,
Aye.
Fire,
Aye.
Niles, Miller,
Aye.
Brandel,
Aye.
Lars,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Kraus.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, resolution number 5, a resolution to accept the 2019 sewer and storm utility financial statements and audit report. I will read it and I will ask for a motion from Alderman Miller after I do. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Jefferson that the 2019 storm and sanitary sewer utility financial statements and audit report are hereby accepted.
Alderman Miller, I would make a motion to move resolution number 5.
Thank
Second,
you.
Brando.
Second by Alderman Brandel. Any discussion? You heard the presentation here. We appreciate Baker Tilly's fine work for us once again this year. If there are no other questions or comments, I will ask for approval on a call of the roll. All in favor signify by saying aye as your name is called. No if you're opposed.
Alderperson Fire,
Aye. Buyer.
Niles, Miller,
Aye.
Brandel,
Aye.
Lars,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Kraus,
Aye.
Tully.
Thank you. It's unanimous. Resolution number 6, a resolution to adopt a citizen participation plan. City of Jefferson, resolution number 6, whereas the City of Jefferson has applied for a Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and whereas the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration, the DOA, and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, requires recipients of the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG monies to have in place a citizen participation plan. And whereas the citizen participation plan shall encourage citizen participation, especially by persons of low and moderate income, LMI, provide citizens reasonable and timely access to local meetings and information, provide for technical assistance, provide for public hearings, provide for complaint procedures, and accommodate non-English speaking residents. And whereas the City of Jefferson has prepared and publicly reviewed a citizen participation plan, now therefore be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Jefferson, we officially adopts the citizen participation plan. Alderman Lars, I would ask for a motion.
Alderman Lars would like to move to approve for resolution number 6.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Miller, second.
Alderman Miller is the second. Any questions or comments? Tim, please.
So I think all of you know that we submitted our revolving loan fund closeout request along with an application for CDBG monies to get that money to flow back to the city so that we can construct Plymouth Street in 2022. Al and Chip, these are long-winded discussions I'm going to have to catch you up on, but we don't have enough time for me to do that. But we submitted our application, and the application was reviewed by the Department of Administration. They came back with 5 general comments asking for some amendments, all generally minor. That's what we're doing now. But we're in the system, and I have really good vibes that this is going to end up being approved by the end of May, I would say. You have a bunch of stuff in your packets. Bill, I don't know if you can scroll through these. Okay. In terms of the citizen participation plan, we've had one since 2014. I think that was about the time we reconstructed Center and Sanborn streets, and we used CDBG monies to pay for a portion of that. So we have the plan. There's a real minor amendment that is being made tonight. And when I tell you these applications are really a pain in one's posterior, I really meant it. So the change that you're making tonight is on the plan that we put in place in 2014. We did not have the floor which the Division of Energy, Housing, and Community Resources is located on. That's where a citizen, if they wanted to send a comment or a complaint to the Department of Administration, that's where they would send it to. We had the address, you can see it. We just didn't have the 9th floor. So that's the only change to our citizen participation plan that we're making tonight. And that was a request by the Department of Administration. So pretty inconsequential. The next page that Bill is putting up is the budget. So you can see that the entire project is estimated to be not quite $750,000. It's expensive to reconstruct all of Plymouth Street from Wisconsin to Main Street. And we're asking for approximately $714,000 in a CDBG grant. That happens to be the amount that we think we will send up to the state to close out our revolving loan fund in January of 2021. But that's what we're applying for, to get $714,000 back, basically. They asked that we amend the budget. We did not include $20,000. That's the middle column towards the bottom for engineering costs. We were just going to pay for that ourselves, but they said it needs to be part of the budget, whether it's part of the grant or not. So we've done that. And then lastly, Bill, I think you may have one more slide. Yep, that's it right there. If you look at your packet, those are the 5 points that DOA asked us to amend in our application. They're all pretty inconsequential. So we'll be doing that over the course of the next few days.
Thanks, Tim. Any questions of Tim? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the citizen participation plan, please signify by saying aye. As Sarah calls your name, no if you're opposed.
Niles,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Randall,
Aye.
Lars,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Kraus,
Aye.
Tully,
Aye.
Fire.
Okay, unanimous. Good work, everyone. Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I still moved to.
Approve.
Mr. Young, second by Mrs. Breyer. On a voice vote, all in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye. Right now.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night. Thank you. Good work.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Stay safe.
Good night.